Alright, so in this project we're going to build a audio player. We're going to use the HTML5 media or audio features as well as JavaScript and jQuery to power it. And you can see this is it right here. We basically have an album here. I just randomly picked Linkin Park, no reason, just kind of grabbed it. And this is actually the album, all these songs on this album. Alright, so basically we'll have an image which will most likely be the album cover. Alright, if you do have other bands or whatever and you change the song, then their cover should show up. Alright, so that the cover will change. We have our artist and song name. We have the volume control, play, pause, and stop buttons, as well as previous and next arrows so we can go through the songs. We have a progress bar which will fill up as the duration increases, and we also have the time right here as well. And then down here we just have the songs. Alright, so let's go ahead and play the first song. Okay, so we can turn it up, turn it down. Alright, so we can pause it, stop it. Alright, so if we stop it, you can see that the duration goes away. Alright, now if we want to play another song, we can just kind of click on it and it'll play. Alright, we can skip through, go back, and as you can see, as we click the arrows, it changes down here. Alright, so fairly simple, but we will learn quite a bit. So let's get into it. Let's just pause that. Alright, so let's take a look at the file structure. Alright, so it's pretty simple. First of all, we have a media folder, and inside there is our songs. Okay, so this is basically all from the same album. It doesn't have to be. This will work fine if you want to have other bands or whatever, different covers and stuff as well. The images folder is where we have our covers folder. Alright, we only have one in there right now. And then we have our user interface images. Of course, we have our index page. We're going to have one style sheet, style.css. And for JavaScript, we actually don't need, let me just get rid of these. We don't need these here. All we need is the jQuery file and the main.js. So let me delete these. Alright. So what we're going to do is basically just recreate this. Let me make sure that this still works without those files. Alright. And by the way, that little delay there, that has nothing to do with the player. It's just my system, my speakers. It just needs to kind of play for a second to kick in. So that shouldn't happen with you. Yeah, alright, so let's rename this folder. This is going to be our done folder. I gotta close this. Alright, so let's create our new folder. Alright, so let's just grab the media. Okay, so that's not going to change. It's just going to stay as is. And let's create our folders, CSS, JavaScript, images, and inside the images we're going to have a covers folder and our index file. Alright, we might as well create our other ones as well. We'll create the CSS file. JavaScript. Alright, so for the jQuery, I'm just going to grab it from the done folder, but feel free to go to jQuery.com and download it. Or you can, of course, use the CDN if you don't want to actually include the actual file in your structure. So just like with all of our projects, we're going to start with the HTML. Alright, now different developers have different processes for building applications. Personally, I like to, as you probably know by now, I like to do the markup first, then style it, and then give it the, I guess, the power, if you will, with JavaScript or other libraries, jQuery, Ajax, whatever it may be. Alright, so let's get the HTML down. Alright, so paste in a shell here, and let's just, for a title, we'll just say HTML5 audio player. Now if we take a look at the app, you can see that it has this gradient background, and this is actually CSS3 gradient. It's not an image. Alright, so we're doing that through the actual CSS. And then basically we have a container. Alright, so we're going to have a container ID, and everything will go into that. And then we'll put it in the middle, and I think it's 600 pixels or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. So let's link our style sheet. And we'll be doing the styling in the next video. Alright, now, like I said, we're going to have it all in a container div. So let's say div ID container. And basically the way that this is set up, we're not going to really use any of the new HTML5 tags. It's going to be mostly divs and buttons. Alright, so inside the container, the first thing that we see is the image. Alright, so let's create a div for the image. So I'm going to give this an ID of audio image. And then in here we're going to have an image tag, and we're going to give it a class of cover. Now I'm not going to include a source attribute pointing to an actual image, because I don't want it to be static. I want it to be placed in there through the JavaScript so that it can be dynamic, so that it can change when we change the song. So for now we're just going to leave this like this. Alright, and then under the image we're going to have a div for the actual player. This will include basically everything, all the buttons, the progress bar, all that stuff. So div ID, and I'm going to call this audio player. Alright, now in the audio player, the first thing we see, now when I say the player, I mean this, okay, from here down. We have the artist and song info, so let's create a div for that. We'll say div ID audio info, which will also be placed dynamically. So basically all the content is going to be placed through JavaScript mostly. For the info, we will have